The John, Anik, and Kenny Florian Podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bull artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Headshot, bang. Oh, done.
All right, Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, episode 376 of the Anik and Florian Podcast. 12 times a year, we do pay-per-view recaps. So I'm very excited to do that with my man Ken Flo today. A lot to get to, but a heavy-hearted episode nonetheless. As some of you know, certainly our more avid listeners know, we have an internship program. We had an internship sweepstakes this year. But in 2021, our intern was Casey Williams, and he was on the air a couple times, was a huge asset to the show, really, especially in 2021, longtime listener and viewer of the program before he came on and helped the show. And it was recently brought to our attention that Casey passed away October 25th, unexpectedly and tragically at the age of 35. I believe it was a heart issue of some kind, Kenny. His older brother, Brett Williams, messaged the show and Cody and had some very nice things to say about Cody, by the way, in terms of how Casey felt about him. But my gosh, man, my gosh.
It's horrible, man. It's one of those things also. You're not sure if we're just more aware of it because it's being reported more often, but this is another one of these cases where a young man seemingly healthy is dying unexpectedly of a heart issue. And again, having dealt with unexpected death in the family, it's one of those things that just it grabs a hold of you. It's surprising, it's shocking, it's a horrible thing, and my heart goes out to him and his family, and that was tough to hear.
To Casey's siblings, to Brett and his parents, we're certainly thinking about you guys. And, we apologize. It wasn't brought to our attention sooner, but, certainly today's show will be done in his memory. And we thank him for his contributions to the show. He was a real good dude, wanted to be on the air, did a great job when he came on the air. And I don't know if he was married or if it was his fiance or girlfriend, but my heart goes out to her as well. And my gosh, Cody texted me and, at one point in my life, I could count on one hand how many times, a text message or sad news buckled my knee or brought me to a knee. And unfortunately, as you get older, this is happening all too often. But Case, we love you, man. And thanks for everything you did for us and for all of your support. All right. UFC 282, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev. It's just amazing. When I have 3 minutes, Kenny, to walk from the broadcast booth up to do the post-fight show, I'm thinking to myself, this sport is unbelievable. And I didn't even know in those 3 minutes that I was going to walk up to the set and there was going to be a new UFC light heavyweight championship fight announced in 6 weeks. This sport, in a lot of respects, happy holidays. This sport is the gift that keeps on giving. It really is in a lot of respects. You do a weekly podcast. We're chasing the clock already.
It moves extremely fast, right? Whether you are a fighter and watching the sport evolve before your very eyes, or whether you're moving on to the very next event. The sport and combat in general waits for no man, and things continue to get interesting.
So a few shows ago, you moved to a lav mic. For people who are just listening, you're not seeing this, but on the video side, so will you have a lav mic, like a television mic stuck to your t-shirt? Is that what we're doing? Is this a television studio now? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm up my game, dude. I'm not messing around now.
Brand new computer. Now I have a new computer today.
Yes.
So our cameras should look the same and they should both look squeaky clean. Hopefully they do. Ken Flo's probably got one of those gadgets that covers the camera as soon as the show ends. Are those your children making noise off the top of the show or not?
They are. Yeah,
okay.
That's my son.
No, that's fine.
A maniac. Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly it disappeared, though. Must have a good wife or some good help. Yeah. All right, we have so much to get to today. I can't believe we waited till Tuesday. This was how the schedules fell, and let us get right into it. I guess we will begin with the main event. Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev fight to a split draw. So no vacancy sign, right? You got to be careful with messaging like that because you can get a split draw. I believe it was the 5th split draw in UFC championship history. But when you have a vacant title, I think it makes it a little bit more disastrous than it otherwise would, right? This isn't Stephen Thompson versus Tyron Woodley and T. Wood retains the title. There's no champion, and we'll get to that in a minute. But what were your thoughts on the fight in its totality? And if you care to give a scorecard, we'll take that as well.
Yeah, in watching the fight, I was not really scoring it, right? We're watching it to watching it to enjoy, loosely scoring it perhaps, but just kind of trying to enjoy mixed martial arts here.
Heaven forbid, by the way, that you just sit down and want to watch the goddamn fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I can get into this with DC. Like, we can commentate it and don't have to lean so far into the scoring too.
Yeah, no, totally. And, for me, I always get my first order of priority is kind of watching the techniques, trying to learn from that, seeing what's going on, what are the patterns that are out there. And, I watched the whole fight. They announce who was going to win or what the decision was. And I hear split draw and I'm scratching my head going, what the hell is going on? What happened? It's late by this point. I'm like, I'm going to watch this again and see if maybe I missed something. I go back and I watch it again. And sure enough, I did. If there is a difference between watching it and watching it to score it, if you know the rules, if you know what the judges are looking for, that is entirely possible for that to be a draw. Here's how I scored it when I went back and watched it. Rounds 1, 2, and 3 I had for Blachowicz. Rounds 4 and 5 I had for Ankalaev. Now, round 5, could it have been a 10-8? Yeah, it could have been. So is this possible that it's a split draw? 100%. It's very, very possible. And again, this is one of those things that people need to stop getting so emotional. And if you're gambling on it, throw that out the window. Watch it to watch. Before you're starting to say the R word, a robbery, go back and watch it. I'm seeing guys that have been around the sport for a long time, guys that are, high-level gamblers and, other fighters and stuff saying, Robert, guys, you don't know the sport. I'm sorry. Go back and watch. Look what the judges are looking for. Watch it again. I think it's intelligent people that keep an open mind and that are willing to change their mind when they have new information. Get that new information, watch it with an uncritical eye.
I'm constantly learning, and I have no problem distancing myself from something that is said in real time doing live television. And I do believe the word robbery, we'll get to certainly with the co-main event, should be reserved for only a select few cases. For me, there are only a handful of robberies a year. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of dreadful singular scorecards, but it's got to be reserved for the most selective of instances. So as far as this fight was concerned, round 3 for me is one that is in question. Derek Cleary had it for Magomed Ankalaev. I just felt watching it live that given the leg damage, Jan Blachowicz had done too much to be denied that third round. Sal D'Amato and Mike Bell essentially had the same scorecard. Rounds 1, 2, and 3, all for Jan Blachowicz. Sounds like Ken Flo had it that way as well. And then rounds 4 and 5, they had for Magomed Ankalaev, as all the judges did. But Derek Cleary and Sal D'Amato had a 10-8, and Mike Bell did not. And I got to talk to my guy, Mike Bell, because at times, I think he's a guy that's been at the forefront of being liberal with 10-8, but in this instance, he chose not to go with the 10-8. And had he gone with a 10-8, things would have been different. But yeah, close fight. And I can understand why UFC President Dana White maybe doesn't want to see those two again for the title, even though I really enjoyed the fight. I can understand why promotionally they don't want the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship to be vacant for an extended period of time. But as far as Jan Blachowicz in this fight, and there's a lot to get to, and the way Blachowicz handled himself after the fight, guy's the fucking man. Cody, bleep out the swear too early in the show. But Jan Blachowicz was up in a pretty significant way, I thought, after 3 rounds, after 15 minutes. And I think you can question his fight IQ at the beginning of round 4. I thought he should have been laterally moving and really trying to create distance and further punish the legs. And he just kind of allowed Ankalaev to take control. And there are a lot of fighters that talk about this faithful round 4 in a championship setting or a main event setting. Take round 4 off so you have something left for round 5. I think maybe part of Blachowicz was trying to preserve the tank for round 5. He wasn't preparing for 5 rounds. To me, though, as much as I want to credit Ankalaev for the flip and the pivot mid-fight, Blachowicz needed to maintain some distance and, I don't know, be a little bit more mentally sharp, I thought, in that critical fight moment. Anything for us on that?
Yeah, listen, you can go both ways. I'll go the way of Blachowicz first. Yes, he was moving straight back. He was allowing Ankalaev to lead the dance as you headed into the later rounds. I don't know if it was him showing too much respect for the boxing and the speed of Ankalaev, if that was throwing him off. But the fact that he kind of stopped going to the legs and wasn't showing a whole lot of lateral movement, was a little confusing for me. For me, I thought it was indicative of Ankalaev not following a smart game plan early in the fight. Why wasn't he integrating takedowns? Why did he wait for his leg to get compromised? Actually, why did he wait for both legs to get compromised before he decided to look for a takedown in this fight? If you're looking at how Jan has been in trouble in the past, like when you saw him in his fight against Glover, that's not a guy who's dangerous on the ground off of his back. Why wouldn't you take him down early, slow him down early, beat him up on the ground early, then take him out? I don't know. It was a little confusing to me on both sides as far as strategy goes, but I thought there were some excellent exchanges on the feet. It was fascinating seeing how Jan Blachowicz integrates some beautiful leg kicks as Ankalaev was moving forward. I thought that was beautiful. He stopped doing that, John, to your point, and that's why Ankalaev really started to take over there. But I thought that exchange, really the kicking game of Blachowicz versus the boxing of Ankalaev, was fascinating for those first couple rounds.
So Magomed Ankalaev, decorated Greco-Roman wrestler, decorated amateur mixed martial artist, tremendous UFC career to this point. Anyone who has listened to this podcast hears us talk about signature chokes and offensive submission game. We've talked about Kamaru Usman, our guy Bilal Muhammad at times, and some of these guys who literally can take the fight against most opposition exactly where they want to, but don't necessarily look immediately to take your back or get you out of there. Brings me to Magomed Ankalaev. I don't know if this is a jiu-jitsu maintenance issue or just a control thing. He would rather control you than be offensive, position over submission, but 0 career wins by submission and not seemingly a threat at all to finish the fight once it gets there.
No, he wasn't. It was almost like he didn't want to advance position, really wasn't looking for submission opportunities. And to me, it just shows he's just not comfortable there. And that's one of those situations, whether it's, looking for ways to really take out your opponent, whether it's with strikes or a submission. That's one of those things where if you don't have it in your arsenal, it can come back to haunt you. And I think that's one of those situations with Ankalaev there.
SevereMMA Seán Sheehan, scoring expert, great host and personality, will join us here in a little bit, and we'll dive further into the actual scorecards. Obviously, Magomed Ankalaev is disappointed, and Cody's thrown out the media scorecards, and I don't necessarily care about that. I do, but I really care more with respect about a few select minds when it comes to scoring. And Kenny Florian obviously increasingly is one of those, but there really are people who start at the criteria and then everything spiders off of that. And when I say I'm still learning, it's because I am still trying to mentally get my head to completely devote myself wholly to the criteria and keep the outside factors outside. And that sometimes that's easier said than done. But we're going to talk to people today that are probably going to blow your mind a little bit as far as Paddy Pimblett and the co-main event is concerned. Not there yet, though. As far as Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, Dana didn't like this fight, and I thought when I was sitting on the post-fight set that Magomed Ankalaev would be part of the next UFC light heavyweight championship fight, likely against Glover Teixeira. Obviously, they wanted to move more quickly than that. So as we're doing the post-fight show, it was announced by Dana White at the post-fight press conference that Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira will fight for the UFC light heavyweight championship that is still vacant in about 6 weeks in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I don't even know what to say, man. I mean, I love the quick pivot by the promotion. Certainly, I felt for Anthony Smith having to ingest that on live TV because he was supposed to fight Jamal Hill in a main event, I believe. But Jamal Hill is worthy. I absolutely think he can seize the championship. We know Glover Teixeira was going to get a title fight. But gosh, I mean, isn't this an incredible thing for these 5 or 6 athletes involved in this situation to ingest this on fight night, right?
It's pretty wild. Again, if I was in that situation with where Anthony Smith is, it's like, you're kind of just this innocent bystander. You have no control over any of that stuff. promotionally, business-wise, I think this is the right move for the UFC. They need to be able to move on, and they need to react extremely quickly. You had Glover Teixeira, who was supposed to be in that title fight to begin with. You have a Jamal Hill, who has a lot of momentum right now heading into the sport. And unfortunately for Anthony Smith, he does not. He's like 3-3 in his last 6 fights. So for him, unfortunately, he was going to take a back seat to that situation. The UFC needs to take care of their business first and foremost. They need a champion. They need something they can promote, and they need to find the best fighters to be able to do that. So they're going to move on, as they should. And unfortunately for Anthony Smith, he's not going to get the fight he wants, but I'm sure they'll find him another one.
And he gets it too, right? He gets it. Yeah. And it stands to reason work out better for him, right? Maybe he ends up on the London pay-per-view and maybe it's a pretty good matchup. I still think he could fight Jan Blachowicz depending on Jan's health and how soon he could turn around. It was a grueling 5-round fight in a lot of respects for both of those two men. Ankalaev needs time to heal. And so 6 guys essentially are involved in this. So Yuri Prochazka's got to think, man, they're going to spin this around pretty quickly here. I guess it's not the worst thing for him to just keep this sort of spinning and keep these guys beating the hell out of each other. Anthony Smith, we mentioned, kind of is what it is. Jamal Hill is the guy who is streaking. Candidly, he's the guy that everybody wants to see. He's the betting favorite to be the UFC light heavyweight champion 6 weeks from now. You mentioned Glover. Not only is he Brazilian, but he was the guy who was to be next in line. So it's easy to talk about him. And then it comes to Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. Got to be just crazy for Ankalaev. You think you have won the title, and now who knows what's going to happen? What does Magomed Ankalaev now have to do? Now have to put on paper to get another championship opportunity in the UFC? Like, I don't know what his contract status is, and maybe Ankalaev will fight the winner of this fight between Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira. Doesn't sound like Yuri Prochazka is even going to fight in 2023, although I wouldn't put anything past that dude. But what's Magomed Ankalaev going to do? I mean, it really is crazy, man. Like because again, as a commentator, I feel like we're about to announce the win for him. Now I dive deeper. I understand why it was a draw, but in the moment I thought Magomed Ankalaev was about to get belted. And I don't mean with a physical object, to his head. I mean, this dude's about to walk out with the ultimate box checked. And now his next fight might not even be for the title. It's pretty crazy.
It is crazy. All of those scenarios were possible that night. I could have seen Ankalaev getting the win. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If Jan got the win, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And this draw, I actually don't have a problem with it. So for Ankalaev, at the end of the day, you have to go back and look at the person in the mirror, watch the fight, honestly assess what you did right and wrong, and work from that. That's it. You are looking for ways to get better, period. Whether you're winning, losing, or drawing, it doesn't matter. I think there's a lot to learn from this fight. Ankalaev and his team, I think, need to look at this honestly and assess what they did right and wrong in preparation for this fight and how well they thought they executed during the fight itself. I think if he does that, he is going to be back better. And this is a guy that absolutely could not only be a champion at 205 pounds, but could hold the belt for a very long time as well.
Masterfully put. Seán Sheehan, for the record, had it 48-47 Magomed Ankalaev. So perhaps he saw that first round or even that third round for Ankalaev. We'll get into that a little bit more deeply with Seán coming up here in about a half an hour. But I do want to transition now to the co-main event, Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. It's Paddy Pimblett by unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board, even though the judges seem to see this thing differently. Your thoughts on Paddy Pimblett escaping with what is a controversial win over Jared Gordon by unanimous decision?
Yeah, so this is another one where people throw around the R word, the robbery word, and watching it live, I didn't even see the robbery at all. I said, after round 3, I said, I don't know who wins this fight. Whoever gets it, it's close enough to, I really don't care. I don't know. I thought that Jared Gordon in round 3 didn't adapt the way that he should. I don't fault him for trying to look for a takedown here. Where I might throw some fault his way is if it's not working, mix it up, do something else. That left hook was working great for you the whole fight. It seemed like he ignored that. He was dead set on just trying to take him down. It wasn't working. He was controlling him up against the fence, but I don't think he was throwing anything that really landed. Patty was defending the takedown. So the way I scored it, Jared Gordon won round 1. And I thought round 3 was the closest to score. I had Patty winning round 2. And in round 3, as far as damage and striking goes, I thought Patty really was the only one who was landing strikes in round 3. Gordon tried to take the back. He slipped off. And unfortunately for Jared, he lost position there and allowed Patty to kind of end the fight on the back there when he threw a couple strikes. So I don't know, as far as effective grappling, effective striking, I don't have a problem with Patty winning round 3. Now, I thought Patty did win the fight 29-28. Now, overall, this was not a good performance for Patty. I thought that in a way, I just don't see him beating anyone in the top 15 after that fight. I just don't. I don't see him climbing up the ranks. I think he'll be a popular fighter, and there's some fun fights out there for him. But this was a fight where I was really waiting. Is this a guy that can actually do something in this insane 155-pound division? And I didn't get that answer. To me, he didn't prove himself as elite in that division. He will struggle against everyone from the top 15 to the top 10. I don't think he breaks or beats anyone in the top 10, unfortunately. So I think this was an opportunity to prove it. It was a big spot, a lot of eyes watching, and he didn't succeed in that regard. Did he beat Jared Gordon? Yeah, sure. If it went the other way with Jared, I think it'd be a little bit more controversial. But yeah, I don't think it's out of the question that Jared won that fight either. But it was close. But people saying robbery, come on, stop. If you hate Patty, all right, that's on you. But if you're really watching and trying to score that fight, that was an extremely close fight.
No, there are a lot of elements to it. There are a lot of people that subconsciously maybe think that they're objective, and they aren't necessarily objective when assessing somebody like Patty Pimblett, because they have an axe to grind and they don't want him to succeed because they think that everything has just been handed to him on a platter. There's so much to get into, and I thought you did a nice job sort of efficiently touching on a number of different angles. As far as Patty Pimblett's trajectory is concerned, largely I would agree with you. I think we all wanted to know going in how much this performance maybe would tell us about his future ability against guys in the top 15. I do think he's a lightweight and not a featherweight. I think that cut would just put him in such a bad place in more ways than one. I do think he's going to have to realize success at lightweight. But I don't know that there's just this huge gap of space that he can close in terms of getting better, right? This is not a rookie. This is a guy who has been built the right way in terms of his skill development, championship experience, and success outside the UFC. But he's not a spring chicken. So I do think he can get better, and I do think he can sniff the top 20. But, go look at the number 15 ranked lightweight in the world, and that's a really hard fight for Patty Pimblett right now. Now, as far as the scorecards are concerned, so Doug Crosby, Chris Lee, and Ron McCarthy are the 3 judges who scored the co-main event. Chris Lee is the best judge of those 3 for me historically. He gave Jared Gordon round 1. The other 2 judges gave Patty Pimblett round 1. And I guess that's my biggest issue, right? You can absolutely criticize Jared Gordon for what happened in the 3rd round. And again, a lot of people don't want to hear this, right? I almost started the show by saying if people want this to be the space in which, and again, Longo's going to come on here any minute and say that Jared Gordon got absolutely hosed. And candidly, I texted Jared after the fight that I thought he got hosed, right? But some of that was maybe my emotion for Jared. And I thought he won rounds 1 and 3. And as I sit here, I still did have the fight, by the way, 29-28 for Jared Gordon. I just don't see how you can give Patty Pimblett that first round. I felt like Jared landed the more damaging, more significant strikes by a significant margin. Yes, you're right. He abandoned that left hook thereafter for whatever reason. But to me, a 10-9 for Patty Pimblett from Doug Crosby and Ron McCarthy in that round is borderline indefensible. So I don't like that necessarily. Chris Lee gave Patty Pimblett rounds 2 and 3. And I do think Jared Gordon, as I mentioned, is open to some criticism in round 3. At one point, our producer, Zach Candido, got in my ear and said 3.5 minutes in or whatever it is that Jared Gordon had landed 0 significant strikes at that point in time. Yeah. So 0 significant strikes in the clinch. And there's such a huge discrepancy in terms of how referees handle these situations. And some referees are super impatient. But to me, there should have been more stern warnings from the referee. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Herb Dean. but there should have been more stern warnings for Jared Gordon to be busy in these situations. I still didn't think that Paddy Pimblett did enough to come back and win the round. I know you did. Certainly Paddy Pimblett's clinch strikes were more effective, and then Jared had that situation where he slipped off and Paddy maybe took the back at one point in time. So when I watched that third round back, I wasn't as offended by a 10-9 Pimblett in round 3.
Yeah, I would say this, John. I absolutely agree with you on round 1. The fact that is scored for anyone other than Jared Gordon doesn't make any sense. You're looking at clean strikes that are damaging blows, that are backing up Paddy Pimblett. Jared Gordon was landing those shots. Jared Gordon won round 1. No question about it. You're giving that round to Paddy. You don't know what you're watching, in my opinion.
All right, stop right there. So 2 of the 3 judges don't necessarily know what they're watching as far as that round is concerned. And we have to say about Douglas Crosby coming off one of the more dreadful scorecards the night before in a different promotion on Friday night. So crazy to me that 2 of the 3 scorecards that matter could look at round 1 and score that for Paddy, as you were saying.
Yes. Now round 3, here's the thing. Here's my problem with round 3 is, where was Jordan's effective grappling and effective striking? The only thing that I see as effective would be Jared Gordon kind of pinning Paddy up against the cage. But if I'm pinning you up against the cage, not throwing any strikes, and getting hit more often than I'm throwing shots, am I effective as a grappler? Was he effective when he was holding him up against the fence? And was he effective when he failed on that back attempt? That's where I have a problem with it. And again, we're talking about millimeters. We're talking about, but if we're looking at something of who's more effective in both the striking and grappling realm, I would say that Paddy edged him out there, which basically takes away the second criteria, which goes into control and all that stuff. So,
all right, let's bring Ray Longo into the conversation, the Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So one question that I was going to ask Seán Sheehan, and Raymond, it's great to see you. We never take your appearance for granted. Ray? Oh my goodness. You gotta be kidding me.
What a tease.
So what I was going to ask Seán Sheehan.
There he is.
Raymond.
What's up, my man?
Looking good, my man.
Let's go. What a big show.
So one thing that I was going to ask Seán Sheehan, who is an outstanding MMA scoring guy and host, who's going to join us in a little bit. So Jared Gordon in round 3, and we know you have strong opinions on this, and we certainly want to bring you into the conversation. Jared Gordon's grappling, staying in that clinch position in that third round, right? It doesn't really score as far as the criteria is concerned, but depending on the referee, it's enough to maintain the position. So what were your thoughts overall on the fight and how it transpired in that third round, my good man?
In reference to what, though? Did he win the round? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess what are your thoughts overall on that third round?
Well, my thoughts overall is that Jared Gordon won the fight. That's my thoughts overall. What difference does it make what I thought of the third round? You know what I'm saying? Like, based on the judge's criteria, who won the fight? Who won the round?
After the third round, I thought it would have been abhorrent, appalling for anyone to see the third round for Paddy Pimblett. But when I actually had some separation from it, and when I leaned into the criteria and watched it back, maybe more objectively than I was in that moment, I can understand why scoring people who leaned into the criteria, minds that I trust, would suggest that what Jared was doing was not effective grappling. And so I'm asking the question, well, if it's not effective grappling, it was certainly enough for him to maintain the position. The referee didn't intervene. So for me, it's enough to win the round.
Hey, first off, always go with your first impression. That's the first thing. This is what happens, right? This is what happens, Kenny.
Well, not for me. I'm calling the fight, though.
Right. But everybody judges the fight, and then it goes south. And then we start to try to figure out, well, maybe this. Well, maybe should we have to do that? Jared Gordon won the fight. It's pretty obvious.
Well, Kenny thought Paddy won it. So
you thought Paddy won that fight?
Yeah. I didn't think. I thought that Jared won round 1. I thought that Jared won round 1. I thought that Paddy won round 2. And I think that round 3, there is nothing that happened from really either side to say that they won that fight decisively. If you see round 3 and you have a strong opinion on who won that fight, I just don't see that happening. Hey, if Jared won the fight, I'm like, okay, it was close, and I think it was close enough. It came down to round 3. I didn't think there was anything crazy that was done by either fighter, but I also don't think that Jared would have won with effective grappling. I don't think he did anything. I really don't. Patty landed more strikes than him.
It actually came down to round 1, I guess, right? Because 2 of the 3 judges did have Jared Gordon winning that 3rd round.
Yeah, which is crazy. I don't think there's any way you could have Jared winning round 1. But to me, the way I saw it, to me, the controversial round or the close round is round 3.
Yeah.
What's the best thing that Patty did in that fight, in your opinion?
Well, certainly. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kenny. Please
I was going to say, I thought he definitely landed way more in round 2. Jared wasn't landing more than him in round 2.
But Kenny, sloppy looping punches that Jared caught on his arms. There wasn't a straight punch thrown.
Jared wasn't landing really much in round 2 either.
He had to land a left hook once, I would think.
But if you go back and watch it, I think you might be surprised. I don't think that that's a robbery at all. I don't think that was.
I'd imagine the comments are going to be pretty lit up, and people will take selective sentences and then run with it. I will sit here and say I think there's an argument in a close fight that Jared Gordon won all 3 rounds. Right? I did give Paddy Pimblett round 2, and. I saw Paddy Pimblett afterwards, and he acknowledged it as a shite performance to me as we were crossing paths on the post-fight show. I mean, he certainly acknowledged this not as his best performance. And Jared Gordon himself, to his corner, questioned whether or not he had won rounds 1 and 2. So I do think the fight was close, but I certainly thought that Jared Gordon won round 1. To me, round 1 was the most decisive of the 3 rounds.
Yep.
I thought Gordon was productive in round 2, but I did give that round to Paddy Pimblett. And then in round 3, because the referee let Jared Gordon dick around in the clinch for as long as he did, to Jared Gordon round for me every day of the goddamn week. So for me, it felt pretty clear 29-28. But as I said, when I got some separation, I understood why there was not a lot to score in that 3rd round. And Ray, I'm just saying, I know you think Kenny's out of his fucking skull, but the scoring experts, I believe, will tell you they're only focused on what they can actually score. And there was not a lot of offense to score in that 3rd and final round on either side.
Yeah, was it 3.5 minutes? Jared didn't throw any strikes in round 3?
Didn't land a significant strike, I guess.
For a significant strike. A knee to the thighs, insignificant.
Yeah.
Hey, I just was told that
because that it's subjective again, like what's damage and what's not damage. You know what I mean? Like it's like the guy has his mouth open, he's gasping for air, and then Dominic Cruz will tell you that's what I do. I wasn't gasping for air. Well, so who the fuck knows, really? I mean,
hey,
we're here again making up shit. Everybody's first impression was Jared won the fight. I know why I think he won the fight. He was the cleaner, better guy, period. That's it.
I are in agreement. I feel horribly for Jared. I feel like it should have been the biggest win of his career. I'm just saying, Ray. I don't care about the masses. I care about the select few individuals out there that I trust that are interpreting the criteria in a really the way it's supposed to be. And we're all trying to affect change to whatever degree, whether it's judges or whatever. And when it comes to 10-8 rounds, there's a lot of people talking about corruption when it comes to the Nevada State Athletic Commission and some of these commissions. I will say there's certain judges that have absolutely no business being in these seats. And to whatever degree that I can affect change, I can just assure the masses out there that I'm going to do everything in my power to have some conversations with powerful people because I don't know, man. I don't care so much about the totality of these certain close fights, but when I look at singular rounds sometimes, I'm like, man, that dude, that's just not at all the way that round should have been scored. And that dude either has some agenda or something going on.
Based on what you guys are saying, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should have them fight, and then we'll give the decisions on Monday when we could fucking look at the tapes over and over again and figure out a way who won the fight.
People that I'm talking about, the scoring people, they're scoring this in real time and giving their scores out there, But again, there are a lot of people that are just going to come all over Kenny for scoring the fight for Patty, right? And, he could say, it was a close fight. I really don't know, he could fence it, right? And be a lot, he's so now not aligned with the majority that everybody's just going to fucking come after him for that.
No, it doesn't. That's his opinion. It really doesn't matter. I'm just thinking, if you're looking at that fight and you can't tell who the better guy was, that's not good.
Yeah. I don't even know where to begin, right?
It's not.
I know, but there are a lot of people that devote a lot of time to trying to interpret this stuff the right way. But yeah, I think there are a lot of people that feel for Jared Gordon, and obviously he's a very spiritual and faithful man, and he is spinning it to the positive. As far as Paddy Pimblett is concerned, Ray, do you have any thoughts of him as far as his ceiling and his performance?
Look, I didn't see anything, man. Give Frivola the fight. Let him fight somebody.
I love it.
Give
I love
Frivola
it.
the fight and see what happens with his chin sticking up in the air like that. See what happens to him.
I love it.
I don't think he could go much further unless he makes some serious improvements. The way he handled the mic after the fight, I thought was horrendous. He thinks that was fight of the night. Do you think it was fight of the night, Kenny? Do you agree with him on that?
That was
horrible. I don't think there's a chance that he beats anyone in the top 15.
Yeah, and the fact that he's talking like that, it just leads me. Listen, if you're going to ask me who I thought the judges were going to give that fight to after the fight, I would 100% Pimblett was getting the fight. It's just the way it is. I would have that. I 100% said. So I didn't think he won the fight, but if you ask me, who do I think the judges are giving it to? Paddy Pimblett.
So Kenny was pretty critical of Paddy Pimblett as far as the performance and as far as his ceiling is going forward.
Yeah, not good.
But I don't know. I do just think it's a little bit simplistic when you say, it's just going to go to the big superstar, as if to say, right, that, because that is to suggest that, these fighters are either in the back pocket of the UFC or that, it somehow benefits them to score it for the bigger name. And that's a pretty serious charge. I'm not saying you're making it or you're not, but that's a pretty serious charge, right?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I am talking to you or anybody out there who's making that charge. And I'm not even saying that.
I'm saying this. I'm saying if you're looking into James Krause and the betting controversy and what's going on with that, you got to look at judges and refs because they could sway a fight easily. That guy could have, even the ref, maybe he wanted that fight to stay on the fence. I don't know. What do I know? Why did he let him stay there? Why did he let him stay there? Maybe there was something on that.
Well, Herb Dean was the ref.
When you have a judge that's friends with fighters, that is got close associations with corners and management, and look at this guy, what he said about Crosby, this AJ Azagam or whatever his name is. Why is the guy judging my fight? He helped me fill out my forms and get jiu-jitsu matches. Why is a judge helping a fighter fill out his forms for anything and then judging his fight? Just answer me that. Because we got problems. There's major problems. Ariel Wani hit it dead on with his analysis. And the guy harassed him. He stalked him. Why is this guy still around? He got on Chael's podcast, destroyed Nick Limbo. The guy's the commissioner for New Jersey. You're letting this fucking mutt dictate what's going on and just piss all over people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mazzulli, answer the question. Did Mike Mazzulli look into AJ Agazarm's claims that this guy filled out his forms and was judging his fight? You're the head of the ABC. What'd you do? That kid's never even fought after that fight. It was 2020. What happened to him? He didn't get rewarded. I bet he got penalized. We should get him on the phone. See how close, how Crosby, how did he approach you? What did he do? How did he fill out those forms for you? What did he tell you? This is a judge. Then he has to judge a fight. All right. You don't think that guy somehow hooked into Danny Sabatello? Are you fucking kidding me? Kenny, you know him. You know he knows people. You know he goes to gyms and talks to people. What the fuck is going on? I mean, if these commissioners, I'm saying if Bob Bennett was still in Nevada, that shit never happens. They don't fly that guy from Connecticut to Nevada. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I agree with everything out of your mouth right there, largely, and I'm glad that.
And I'm glad it's not me this time. I swear to God, I'm glad it ain't me. I got nothing to do with it.
Well, no, I mean at this point, it's hard for me to stay quiet, right? It really is. I mean, obviously, you mentioned the Danny Sabatello thing. And then that Paddy Pimblett 10-9, obviously in round one, on the back end of historically would have just been some obviously wayward and bad scorecards. Yeah, no, certainly as far as select individuals are concerned, they have no business, still having the seats that they do.
No, my point was with the corruption, you could sway a fight easily, at least 2 or 3 or 4% as the ref. You let it stay down an extra 20 seconds. You bring them up. You could do anything. It's not that hard.
And in terms of unanimous versus split, I just think it's not that I have no respect for the collective, Kenny, but I guess for me, when it seems like 95% of people who watch fights regularly have the fight for Jared Gordon, and then not one of the three, at least, right, has 2 rounds for Jared Gordon, to me, that seems a little bit problematic. I don't say corruption necessarily. And maybe that's just me not leaning enough into the criteria. Like Chris Lee, I don't think has any agenda whatsoever. And he would sit here and say, they gave me nothing to score in round 3, so I scored it for Paddy. I'm not corrupt at all. And some people say Chris Lee should be fired. As far as I know, Chris Lee is one of the better judges in a field in which there are very few elite judges, and he just didn't see a lot to score in round 3, right?
Okay,
he did give Jared Gordon round 1, because to me, it's absolutely indefensible to give Paddy Pimblett round 1.
Okay, the other thing is that based on what you guys are saying, round 10 should have been a draw. Should have been a 10-10.
Well, yeah, and the scoring system is
perfect. Yes. That's a perfect round for it's even. Nobody won.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
If you're telling me there's nothing to score, then how do you score it? Score it even.
Well, and I also think, too, as a judge, if the referee, and it was Herb Dean, and historically, Kenny, Herb Dean, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, and not for nothing, he does allow these guys to grapple themselves out of this situation. And largely, I would prefer them have to work their way out. It's not as though Paddy had the energy to get away from Jared, right? He was effectively grappling in my mind, but people who really ingest the scoring the way you're supposed to would say that it wasn't effective grappling. But to me, if the referee is allowing you, as Herb Dean was, and in my opinion, longer than maybe he should have, but if he's allowing you to be there, then as a judge, I have to say, well, this is effective grappling because the referee sees it as such. He's allowing him to be there. And that was essentially the bulk of the round.
Yeah, but you don't take into account, you don't score a fight necessarily on what the referee is allowing. You're scoring on what is actually transpiring. Is Paddy effectively stopping the take? Are you effectively taking someone down if you're just pinning them up against the cage and not doing anything?
Right. Maybe it's just control, and then you don't score it.
Right. Maybe, right. Is Paddy countering the takedowns? Is he putting him in a weird spot so now Jared can't do anything?
Well, let me ask you, did MERROW win that round against Jose Aldo when he had him up against the cage, or you think it's the same thing? He lost that round.
It was totally different. MERROW was nonstop punching and moving.
Yeah.
So he was trying to do something.
Jared was just holding him.
Right. You could easily say ineffective, though, whatever he was doing. You could go that route.
He was punching, but the striking was effective.
I thought he was just kneeing and foot stomping, but, he was trying to get him down, too. I mean, you got to
he's moving.
You got to go in burst, but I thought Jared was trying to take him down a couple of times.
Yeah, and I think the most significant strike, if you go back and watch that fight, Jared lowers his head, he elbows, and immediately Jared raises his head up and changes his position completely.
Right.
That's doing something with your striking. Jared, there's no strike I don't think that anybody could point to and be like, oh, wow, Jared really won that round because of this, and that.
And for me, if ever there were a fight for open,
period.
No, it's not a robbery. If ever there were a fight, though, for open scoring, this is the one, right? Because even though Gordon maybe himself was questioning it to Greg Jones and his corner, Ron McCarthy and Doug Crosby scored round fucking 1 for Paddy Pimblett, which to me is indefensible. And if those two guys flip that one round, then Jared wins the fight by split decision. So,
and that would be me too. That would be fine too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Kenny's actually saying there's only one defensible scorecard.
I'm not saying. I never said it was a robbery. I just said I thought Jared won.
Yeah. No. I texted him.
By fall wasn't fight of the night, and I thought Jared did a lot of good things in that fight.
I texted Jared that I thought the decision was trash, right? And largely I still do, but I understand Chris Lee's card is the one that's defensible, and he had a 29-28 Pimblett. So, oh man. It's supposed to be fun, right?
Let's get it back to fun. How do we do that?
So how do you handicap Jamal Hill's chances right now, the betting favorite to beat Glover Teixeira and become the new light heavyweight champion in 6 weeks? Huh? What a crazy night as far as that division was concerned, huh?
I'll tell you, one guy you don't want on your bad side is Dana.
Huh. Yeah.
That's one guy.
I'm glad my contract is done. Jesus.
Oh, man.
What do you have for us on all of that noise, Raymond?
Which noise? No, which
the light heavyweight division, Ray. I know it's early.
I got to tell you, man, I thought Magomed, I mean, how he came back from those leg kicks and was able to really dominate rounds 4 and 5. You got to give the guy some sort of credit, but that's another that guy's he might go to the gulag right now. We might never see him again. He's not Magomed's not coming back. He's been shoved off to the gulag. No, I think Jamal Hill's a major problem. Great hands, really big power. Glover's got to get that fight to the floor, and he's long and he's huge. We
did not acknowledge Ankalaev's otherworldly toughness, Kenny, and I was flying back with my twin brother, and he was like, "Dude, there's so many fighters that would have just gone to the ground, and it would have been 100%. Done, man." Right? Like with respect to the rest of the roster, I don't know how many fighters would not have been there to fight through that, but gosh, I mean, what respect for that guy's resilience, huh?
Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, his leg was messed up. He switches his stance, and then Blachowicz starts taking out the other leg. It looked like that leg was compromised, and somehow his legs just kind of came back to life in rounds 4 and 5. It was insane. But again, Ankalaev, where he's from, how he's performed in the past, it wasn't surprising. But yeah, man, that's an insane level of resiliency and
holy crow. Yeah. And he was able to, and his shots were quick, man.
Yes.
I mean, like when he turned it up, he was a totally different guy.
Yeah.
Totally
wasn't looking
different.
Good for a while.
But I enjoyed that fight though. I don't know what was wrong with it.
Yeah, I thought the fight
that was an exciting fight.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for both of the guys, and Blachowicz in particular in defeat, Ray, just the way he handled everything. And
that's what I want to see. I love it. But let me I want to shout out Daria Alves too. You mentioned on the show. She's a really close friend. She's been at the gym a lot. She worked with me and Weidman on some mental stuff. She's awesome, man. She's a sweetheart. She's a breath of fresh air. And if anybody has a calm way of speaking, it's Daria Alves, and she's very intelligent. And I think she did a great job with Jan. Like, it's just a great job.
You're saying I shouted her out on the broadcast?
Somebody did mention
Daria
Alves.
Her name was on my card. I didn't know if I got to it. That was for you.
She's a sweetheart. For you. You should talk to her sometime. You'd love her.
So there's so much to get to as far as UFC 282 is concerned. Really a weird night in a lot of respects, right? We started with 10 straight finishes, but a lot of them happened late in fights, and they were rallies. The whole night just felt absolutely crazy. Like, it didn't feel card of the year crazy. And then all of a sudden we need the judges' scorecards in the final 2 fights, and then all hell breaks loose. And then half an hour later, we have a new light heavyweight championship fight. This sport is out of its fucking mind sometimes.
What about Billy Q? Can we speak about him?
Yes, let's talk about Billy Q.
Come on, man.
So he's super long for featherweight, man. He really is super long, and the cardio base is just such a weapon for him. I mean, certainly he weaponizes his cardio and can take a beating. If you didn't see the fight, it was an early prelim. I mean, this is a main card fighter, but it was an early prelim. He beats Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez obviously got off to a good start, won the first round, but your guy Billy Q gets it done round 2. Yeah. What were your thoughts on Quarantello?
Man, that's what he does, man. And you back that type of fighting with a beautiful personality, and you got Billy Q, man. It's just a great guy. He's very humble. He's soft spoken, but when he goes in there, man, he just lets it all go out in the octagon. Is what everybody should do.
What'd you think of the 18-year-old Raul Rosas Jr.?
Man, he looked good. I think he looked better in this fight than he did in the Contender Series fight. Yeah. I thought he looked like he tightened some stuff up. Yeah.
So, Kenny, when you're the guy who gets the call to fight the 18-year-old prospect, right? Or if you're Jamie Pickett and they say, "Hey, Jamie, we'd like you to fight Bo Nickel." you're going to be one of the biggest underdogs in UFC history. Right now, Jay Perrin was not that as far as the betting line was concerned. But when you're Jay Perrin, you got to think, all right, is this like cow to slaughter situation? Did they think I'm a bottom feeder? Did they think I'm the worst bantamweight on the roster? Right? Because candidly, promotionally, right? Obviously, you're trying to match make the 18-year-old in such a way that he doesn't fight an absolute killer in the most dangerous bantamweight outside the top 15 in his first UFC fight, right? So for Jay Perrin, I think it's a little bit of a mind fuck. Obviously, Jay did not handle it well, talking all sorts of shit, calling the kid a pussy at the weigh-in. I mean, felt like it was over before it started. But, I felt for Jay out of Lowell, Massachusetts, right? But, dude, Raul Rosas Jr., man, Kenny, I don't know what you thought of him, but he looked pretty ready for prime time to me.
I think so. Listen, I'm blown away by the fact that at 18 years old, he has that level of composure and he has that level of skill to be able to execute it on the large stage, on the big stage. Like, I didn't have that kind of composure at 18 years old. It's amazing. Just the kids that are coming up now and the mindset that they're able to develop with an actual goal of being in the UFC in their early 20s or even in their late teens. That is crazy. That is unheard of. That is extremely rare. There's not a whole lot of 18-year-olds out there in the world that would, again, be able to accrue those skills over time and be ready for a UFC level fight, let alone have the ability to deal with pressure on the big stage like Rosa. So this is a kid, I see big things for him. Yeah. And I hope he comes along slowly still. But the fact that he's executing like that, performing like that at 18 years old in the UFC already, I think it's a nice preview for what we will see more of in the future. But it shows that he is the future. That is extremely impressive, man.
Yeah, Ray, I think he's ready for Aljo right now, but we should probably just take it a little bit slower.
That's actually ridiculous, but
it's a joke.
I see Aljo, but Aljo's a nice. Oh, it is a joke, right?
Yes, it's a fucking joke.
No, I don't know. I didn't hear it.
Well, no, sorry. Did you see what Aljo said about it or no? So Aljo sort of engaged, right?
Yeah, well, he's going to engage. We know that.
Right. No, obviously, don't even get me started with the physical maturation, right? The question beckons, is Raul Rosas Jr. ready for number 22 in the world versus number 40, right? Because bantamweight's very deep. That's the question right now. Not is he ready for number one? Would you give him, another guy on Jay Perrin's level with all due respect, or are you giving him somebody that's on the fringe of the top 15?
No, I would give him somebody on Jay.
Yes,
give him
100%.
a couple of fights at the beginning. He's a young kid.
Just a different stylistic matchup, but somebody on the lower level.
I agree with Kenny. But I do think you can accrue the skills, but mentally, I don't think you're nowhere near ready. And if you could execute them, because look, man, all our Olympic athletes, they're 18, 19 years old. And I'll tell you, Kenny, I saw they had one on the other night and on Amazon or one of those stations, Netflix, I don't know. But I can't think of the jiu-jitsu guy's name. The young twin brothers.
Oh, the Rotolo brothers.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they're amazing, dude.
How old are they? How old are they?
18, 19.
Are you kidding?
Unbelievable.
I don't even know what I'm looking at.
They're crazy.
No idea what I'm looking at. Yeah. No idea what I'm looking at, John. 18 years old.
I'm telling you, when they were like 11 and 12, if you saw them rolling, you'd be like, I don't even know what they're doing. It looks like they're doing stuff that black belts can barely do.
I don't know.
I mean, that was at 11 and 12. Like they're next level. Their dad's a black belt. They've been training since they could walk. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I'm telling you, that was incredible. That's why I say you think like Raul, that kid Roses, he would they wouldn't last 2 seconds with one of those guys. Yeah. It would be brutal. But that's
Gordon Ryan was actually asked about the brothers. He said one of them's getting a little bit confident. So we'll see how that all plays
Gordon's
out.
at a whole different level himself. Yeah.
Hey, Ray, I'm going to bring Seán Sheehan in here if I could from SevereMMA. Outstanding contributor to our podcast and really somebody who has so much value in the MMA space. Good afternoon, my man. It's nice to see you again.
How are you, lads? Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be on. Lovely to see Ray as well. Are you ready?
I just want to give you a chance to say hi to the great Ray Longo before we let him get out of here. Hey, Ray, we love you. We appreciate your time. And, I don't know if you're withholding a Christmas card for Ken Flo because he scored the fight for Patty.
No, I'm not. First off, I'm not that guy. I just disagree. I don't. I love Ken Flo. Yeah. You think we're gonna go?
We're not gonna agree on everything.
Yeah, right. You think I'm gonna be mad because he scored the fight for Patty Pimblett?
Everybody knows you reserve your venom for me and not Kenny anyways. So.
I can't help
Cantankerous.
I can't help that Kenny's on the take. What are you? The guy needs money.
I need the money. Come on.
Money.
That's right. No, he's good. BattleBots. Hey, Ray, we love you, buddy. We'll talk to you next week. We got at least one more show before the year's out.
Wait, hold on, Kenny, residuals on BattleBots?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh,
a little bit.
Look at that. Look at this guy. How about that?
A little bit.
That's all you need to know.
This guy.
Hey, Ray, thank you, buddy.
Take it easy, guys. I'll see
you.
Hey, Sean,
Thanks
nice
for waking
meeting
up,
you, buddy.
Nice to meet you, Ray. Thanks very much.
Take care.
The Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. He was okay waking up early, and we appreciate that. But now with us, host from SevereMMA and SureDog.com. On Twitter, you can find him at Seán Sheehan BA. Oh, good day, sir. I'm so glad you were available. It's nice to see you, my friend. How you doing? All right?
Nice to see you. Not much happened over the weekend, did it? It was a nice quiet weekend for judging and all. I was just thinking 10 fights into the UFC. No judges needed. And I was like, it's, what are we going to have to talk about in the podcast tomorrow? And then,
my goodness. Well, we appreciate your time, and I would certainly encourage people. And I'm not begging, but I am imploring you to check out Sean's content, particularly his thorough breakdown that is pinned on his page that goes through the scoring criteria. And also, when you have a weekend like you just did, I think there are a few more valuable voices in the space, so certainly check out his weekly content as well. But the criteria stuff, you got to go watch that. So one thing Ray sort of takes issue with, and this isn't me banging on him when he leaves the chat room, right? In this space, everybody has their feelings in the fight game, I've learned. But in terms of like watching it back, because for me, I felt like in the moment, rounds 1 and 3 were pretty clear for Jared Gordon, and particularly round 3, because he was being allowed to be in the clinch extendedly by Herb Dean. I guess I deem that effective grappling, even if maybe I overscore what was going on there. But I do believe even a commentator who can affect the narrative reserves the right to go seek out opinions maybe that are more valuable than his own, or to watch it back. So, where do you stand as far as like people watching it in the moment versus being able to get some space from it and watch it back?
This is a very interesting one, and I think that's actually a major point of this fight. And I'm in a lucky area, I suppose, where I'm here in Ireland and I cover a lot of, obviously, the Irish scene and the UK scene and Cage Warriors. So I would know Paddy Pimblett. Like a lot of people watching this would know, Justin Gaethje, or might know Conor or Habib. They've seen him for years. They've been watching him. They know every part of his game. And there's a lot of people who've watched Paddy Pimblett twice or 3 times maybe before and are seeing him. So for me to come in and watch the fight from second one, I wasn't shocked that it was a close fight. I would say a lot of people probably were shocked that it was a close fight and that Paddy was eating eating a lot of left hands and things like that. I've seen Paddy lose to Soren Bak. I've seen him lose to Nad Narimani. I've seen him in a very, very, very close fight with Julian Erosa, which he could have lost. I've seen him in all of those fights, and that level of shock wasn't there for me. And I know a lot of people maybe covering this side of the world where, it'd be the same for me if it was someone coming from, CFFC or LFA or somewhere that I mightn't know that well. So I think a lot of the reaction was like, what? Paddy Pimblett's fighting this guy who's a good fighter, Jared Gordon, but maybe the bottom 10 to 15 percentile of lightweights in the UFC, and he wasn't blowing him out of the water. And we have this thing that my colleague over in the SevereMMA podcast, Graham, called expectancy bias. We're expecting something to happen, it doesn't happen, and we got too far the other way. Now, that happened with Talia Santos versus Valentina Shevchenko. It was one of those fights. I think maybe he was even on talking about that, but there was close rounds that Valentina just about won, but everyone gave him to Santos because Santos was a massive underdog coming into it. That didn't necessarily happen here in a big way, but I think it happened in a small way. And I think it turned everyone from calling it a close fight to a robbery. And that's the difference. I would watch back the fight here an hour ago, and at the end of the fight, you said, John, close round and a close fight. And I was watching along on Twitter on Saturday night. After the first round, the vast majority of people close round. After the second round, vast majority of people close round. After the third round, vast majority of people close round. After decision, robbery.
Right.
That is madness to me. The biggest problem, we can roar and shout about MMA judging all we want, but if we lose logic and just go insane after every decision, there will never be anything fixed. You can change the system, you can tear up the criteria, you can have a new criteria, but if every decision is met with that reaction, we are finished. Give me logic. Give me your breakdown of the fight. I don't think this was a good decision, by the way. I scored it for Jared Gordon, but to call this a robbery is, I think, madness. Now, some of the scores in here weren't good, especially the first round, I think, but this was by no means a robbery. And even if it was, right, just break down why. Just tell me why. Tell me why. And especially if you've already tweeted close round, and then you're coming out saying robbery. That to me, and these judges are inept, they haven't a clue what they're doing. This criteria is rubbish. Yet you're the one making yourself look like an idiot, the whole way through. And it happens all the time. And that to me is the most frustrating part. And that was, this was actually a good example of the criteria just being implemented incorrectly. This is actually a great example to have a logical discussion about judging. And then it just turns to madness straight away. And that to me is the most frustrating part.
Yeah. It's tough because not only do you hear it, but it seems like the majority are giving their opinion on something. And I don't know how much they're actually looking at the scoring criteria and then scoring it in an unbiased fashion.
Yeah, 100%. I saw someone the other night saying that they scored a fight one way for their website and they scored a fight another way on their own personal thing because they like to score fights differently. And they score it the way on the website because that's the way the criteria is. Now, John, that's what I've been working with. That's what I've been working with for the last few years. And it's ridiculous.
What did you think? I thought round one was the clearest round, I thought, for someone, which was Jared Gordon. Close, yes, but I thought that was pretty clear for Jared for the most part. I thought round two was for Paddy, and I thought round three really could have gone either way. I thought Paddy maybe landed a little bit more. I didn't think either were really effective with their striking or grappling, and you kind of had to go to something, and I thought Paddy maybe edged him out there. How did you score it round by round, Sean?
I scored it, watching it live, I scored it the same. I scored it watching it back. I scored the first 2 rounds for Jared Gordon, and I scored the third for Paddy Pimblett. I think there's a couple of ways of looking at this, right? The robbery way first. And the best way to decipher if this is a robbery is to score the fight backwards, right? Round 3, could it have gone either way? Yeah, absolutely. I think no one could disagree with that. Round 2, could it have gone either way?
Yep.
I think so.
Yep.
Right. So not a robbery. There you go. It doesn't matter about round 1. It can't be a robbery from that. If you want to say it's a bad decision because they scored round 1 the right way or the wrong way, sorry, absolutely. I have no problem with that.
Right.
But for Paddy Pimblett could easily have won 2 of those rounds. I didn't score it that way. He easily could have. So that's not a robbery. Or Gordon could have scored it. Was it a bad decision? I think it was a bad decision. I agree with you. I think that first round, I went back and I watched it with a fine-tooth comb again today. And look, I stand by what I tweeted after the round. It was a close round. It was really a close round. And I think the more effective strikes were landed by Jared Gordon. That's why I scored it for him. I went back and watched the second round. And so there's a weird thing about the difference between the first round and the second round. Gordon was almost more consistent with the shots in the second round than he was in the first round. And I'll tell you what, after 2 minutes of the first round, Jared Gordon had landed 5 or 6 left hooks, big left hand, lovely shots. And then there was a 100-second period where Jared Gordon didn't throw or land a punch. And Paddy landed maybe 5 or 6 punches. And, on the commentary, after the punch, after the 100 seconds, he landed a nice left hook and goes, there's another left hook again. But there hadn't been a left hook for 10 punches, and Paddy had landed all those 10 punches. That, to me, brought the round a little bit closer. So Paddy won a large period of the first round, but I think the most of the first round was won by Jared Gordon. And the problem with that as well is the period where Paddy won, Jared didn't do anything. The period where Jared won, I think Paddy did something and they landed a few shots. So that's why I think it's kind of brought a little bit closer to me. Still, I think you score it on the more effective strikes. And to me, that was Jared Gordon. And in the second round, I just think Jared Gordon landed the effective strikes throughout the round. Paddy landed some good ones as well. He landed a lovely right hand that rocked Gordon back a bit towards the end of the round. There wasn't much in the clinch. There was a few shots before and after it. It was one of those ones I was watching where the clinch broke out, and I'm thinking someone is going to take this round here in the last minute or whatever it was. And I just thought Jared Gordon did the better of it in that second round. I've no problem with anyone scoring for him. And that third, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Watched it back again today. I just thought Pimblett landed the slightly better shots. I know people as well talk about, should you go to the secondary criteria in that third round? I am fervent in believing this, that if there's punches landed, you don't go to the secondary criteria. John reads it at the start of every pay-per-view and reads it really well. I love the new way that you guys read that. It's absolutely perfect. Unless it's dead even, you don't go. And I say that for the Carla Esparza Rose Namajunas fight as well. There was like 2 punches landed in the whole round. Decipher those 2 punches. Give me who landed the better of those 2. And I think that's the same for the Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon third round as well. For me, the way I deciphered it, I thought Paddy landed the better shots. If you said Jared, I couldn't disagree with you. But again, a very close round. Like, people probably turn off the stream after I say this, but you could have scored that fight 30-27 Paddy Pimblett. You really could. You could score the 30-27 Jared Gordon as well. Would I have agreed with 30-27 Paddy Pimblett? No, I don't agree with 30-27 Jared Gordon either. That's a one I absolutely could see. He could have won that first round. It was close. I scored it for Jordan. I agree with Kenny's breakdown of it. But this was a very close fight. Like, there's a big issue here because Paddy Pimblett is a known guy. And when it's, a known guy, not a known fighter. And that's a big thing here because people are looking at this with the guise of a famous guy and not a fighter A versus fighter B. Yeah. And that was a massive issue. That's a massive issue in this one.
Well, and when Clay Guida gets hit and his hair goes flying, I just have to say, everybody's like, dude, he barely got touched. His hair just going crazy. Paddy, obviously, every time he gets touched, his blonde lettuce goes flying, right? And it looks like he just got absolutely destroyed. And it's not always the case. But certainly this is not the morning on which people want to hear that noise. Let me just ask you this, though, about the third round. And I hope people find this informative, if not wildly entertaining. So I guess I looked at that round 3 as an effective grappling round because Herb Dean really didn't so much as warn Jared over 3.5 minutes or so. But I guess that would be control and not effective grappling. Is that right? So that would be a tertiary condition that I don't even consider because the grappling really wasn't effective. Like, I don't know if you were on the stream, but at one point, my producer, Zach Candido, said, hey, I don't know if it had been 2.5 minutes, but not a single significant strike had been landed in the clinch by Jared.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said there. It's the tertiary condition. And as we said earlier, you don't go to that if there are strikes landed. You don't go to that after a submission attempt or effective aggression. You know, would you call that effective aggression? Maybe you could call getting into the clinch or pushing into the clinch as effective aggression, and then the clinch wouldn't score because that's just control. But that doesn't score in any way. Like effective grappling, it's a weird thing, right? Effective striking is very easy to decipher. Okay, you throw a punch, you punch someone in the face, it's effective striking. If you punch someone harder in the face, it's even more effective than that last punch. But effective grappling is a very, very different one because. If like this is a kind of a stupid example, right? But if you change from southpaw to orthodox, do you score for that? Should you score for that? I don't think you should. If you throw a punch out there and you move forward, should you score for that? I don't think so. Why then just holding and getting into a single position? Should you score from it? Now, if you want to say that's an advantageous position, and it could be, you will get the advantage with the effective striking or grappling, and then you will score from that. So it's like people want to score twice from the same thing. And that to me is just wrong. So I think the criteria is written well there. That's how the criteria should be written. If a position is in fact advantageous, you will get the advantage from it and score with that advantage, not score twice from it. So to me, Jared Gordon held him against the cage. And in fact, you know what? Paddy Pimblett said it afterwards, and watching it back, I kind of agree with him. Paddy actually held him in against the cage for large periods of that as well, because his foot was sore and he didn't want to get out. And look, the strikes, you can decipher who won them or not. I thought Paddy landed it slightly better, but I can see someone looking at it the other way too.
Quick PSA, sort of taken from a Seán Sheehan tweet. For $5 a month, you can subscribe to the SevereMMA Podcast Patreon and stop embarrassing yourselves with opinions on judging. Be part of the solution, folks. And that
I didn't say that. No, someone else said that.
That was Severe. Okay, you retweeted. Okay. Well,
I retweeted it, yeah.
But honestly, like, we are here trying to be a part of the solution. And that's why my mind is so open, especially after shows like this. I know we only have a few more minutes with you, and I do need to budget more time from now on when you are on. But you did score the main event 48-47 for Magomed Ankalaev. So that says to me that you did not find a 10-8 in there, but you found one of the first 3 rounds for Magomed. Is that right?
I did, yeah. I went back and I watched that again, and that first round was very close. On rewatch, I scored the first round for Blachowicz, so I might change from 3-1 to 2-3 basically, but very, very close. The 5th round, I have no problem with someone giving that a 10-8. Now, I'm doing the exact opposite of what I said about that person earlier. I'm trying to score the fight the way the judges score it. And now, this is a positive coming from judging, I think, from the weekend. The fact that round 5 was given as a 10-8. I think we've actually, remember the last time we spoke about the 10-8s changing, I think we've actually rolled back that a bit. We've been seeing more 10-8s again, and that is great. So I'm going to have to adjust the way I'm talking about rounds again, because hopefully it's gone back. I think the stats came up, and I'm not a big fan of stats, as you know, but I think it was 17 strikes to 0 in the 5th round. 4.5 minutes of Ankalaev on top of Blachowicz. And you said it on the broadcast, John, and I absolutely love that you go to the 3Ds. Did he have dominance? Yes, I think everyone probably agree with that. Did he have the duration? He'd like 4.5 minutes. Did he have the damage? I think he had damage, right? So before the 10-8s changed a year ago or whenever, I think that's a 10-8 all day long. I think everyone gives that as a 10-8. Right. After it, I don't think he had overwhelming damage. So that's why I didn't score it a 10-8. But if we're rolling it back a bit, which I think is good, and it would get rid of all this nonsense about half-point systems and all of that, if we were to give the 10-8s the way we used to score them, that would solve a lot of problems like this and decipher between. That's always what people talk about, isn't it? You can't decipher between a close round like the first round and like the 5th round. Both of them 10-9s. Well, one was a 10-9 and one was a 10-8, and we decipher between them. That to me is exactly why the 10-8 should be instituted and used the way it is. So that to me was perfect. I didn't score it that way because I've been scoring it the new way, but maybe I need to adjust the way I'm scoring as well.
And I know Mike Bell, and he was the lone dissenting judge in that 5th round. He had a 10-9, and I agree, actually, having watched it back, that was a 10-9 and not a 10-8. But yes, to your point, 12 months ago or whatever that window was, there was definitely a window in which Mike Bell would have scored that fight, that round 10-8. Oh, man, this is absolutely fascinating. If you want more from Seán Sheehan, Sherdog.com, SevereMMA, they're doing big things with the channel at Seán Sheehan BA. We got to figure out like a monthly segment. But I appreciate you stepping up on short notice and all the work you're doing, honestly, to try to inform people, because I know it can feel like a lost cause at times. And even sometimes, we're friends, but I'm sure there are things even that I say as a UFC commentator that you're just like, And last thing I'll say real quick on the stats, Shawnee, okay? I guess, so obviously there's 2 reasons why I would lean into them. In some part because I know how hard those people work and I don't want to shortchange their work. But I also will say increasingly, Sean, their eyes are so trained that even if I'm 1% more in on stats than I was 12 months ago, like I know how their process is a little bit more than I knew 12 months ago. And I just feel like those numbers maybe have more value than I did when we even last spoke. So for whatever that's worth. I
think stats are like a very good thing for the fighters themselves and the coaches, especially, to see how many, punches you're throwing in around and if you need to up your output or down, whatever it might be. And I think it's actually very good for you to use on commentary as well, for people to people may be watching a fight for the first time or whatever to kind of decipher, okay, it gives you an idea who's in front. I think when we get it kind of mixed up with the actual decision in the end, that's where we start to have problems. But I've no problem with the stats being said or anything like that, but it's just everyone at the end of the fight deciphering them. That's the kind of that's where we sometimes run into issues, especially like a fight we have where there's 20 strikes versus 10 strikes, but the 10 strikes are 10 Jared Gordon left hooks. Yeah, they're going to win that round all the time over 20 other strikes. All right, check out the SevereMMA podcast Patreon. And I will say, too, we obviously lean into the scoring with Seán Sheehan, but he can talk fights, too, folks. I mean, he's got a lot of value beyond this particular corner. But Kenny and I find it wildly interesting. And for me, you're one of the handful of authorities. So thank you, Sean. And we'll talk to you next month, if not sooner, brother. I appreciate it, guys. Anytime. Thanks very much. There he is, at Seán Sheehan BA on Twitter. I am so into this stuff. I really am, because an expert I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, did you hear all the different scorecards across the board? First of all, he scored it the same way I saw it the second time around after watching it. Again, I'm not right, wrong, whatever. It's close. It's all close. You can see it a lot of different ways, from the Paddy Pimblett fight, Jared Gordon fight, to the Ankalaev and Blachowicz fight. There's so many different ways to see it. And this is like, again, really looking at it with a critical eye. The scorecards all over the place. That's how close it was. So everyone stop freaking the F out.
And candidly, if I'm Sal D'Amato, right, and I'm sitting there on my scorecard, I scored the first 3 rounds for Jan Blachowicz and then round 4 for Magomed Ankalaev. I see what Ankalaev does in that 5th round, and I kind of feel like this fight should be a draw, So I score that 10-8, right? Like, and you're not necessarily supposed to do that. You're really supposed to look at those 5 minutes, but I can understand if you're Sal right there. It's like, you know what, man, on the strength of that 5th round, this fight's got to be a draw. This can't be a Blachowicz win 3-2. Honestly, when I look at that fight, draw feels pretty equitable. All right. So much else happened at UFC 282, and I do want to bring Brian Petrie into that conversation. So let's table the pronunciation of the week right now. And if we do have BP, can bring him in. Otherwise, we're just going to move along. Of course, we have Brian Petrie.
Yeah.
My man.
What's up?
At Brian Petrie MMA.
Yeah.
We're looking pretty good Saturday night. If you don't know, Brian Petrie ingested his first UFC pay-per-view in Las Vegas. How was that experience, young man?
Unbelievable. So Friday was rough. We got through Friday, and Saturday was people recognized me. It was the weirdest thing in the world. I had English guys behind me. The guy, I'm not going to do an English accent because it's terrible, but they're like, "Are you Big Gun Brian Petrie?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." And then when I bro hugged John, all the guys in my section were like, "I can't wait to see Anik. I want to take a picture of Anik," because the refs walked by us and they freaked out. So Anik and I bro hug, and I turn around. There's like 10 cameras on us. This guy comes up to me and goes, "Hey, how do you know Anik?" I was like, "Oh." He goes, "Oh, okay, cool." Looked all me confused. Goes back to his buddies. His buddies are like, "Hey, how does he know him?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, produces his podcast. I'm like, "Well, it's bad, but all right." But no, the fights were unbelievable. Chris Curtis, come on. You couldn't ask for a better Vegas trip for myself. And got to see my Bengals win on Sunday, so it was unbelievable.
Actually, I'm talent on the Anik and Florian podcast, folks, if you really want to know. Brian Petrie MMA. I'm talent on the show. Well, that's cool, man. No, it was great to see you, and obviously to see your guy get that type of win. And we shouted out the king of combat.
I love it.
Yeah, you were dressed to the nines, and I know my twin brother was excited to see you, so it was very cool to have you in the building. And hey, man, when you arrive early, we can have a minute. It's kind of nice,
Yeah,
so that was cool. All right, so we got to spend a few more minutes on UFC 282, and I'm just telling you, I'm going to shortchange UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Strickland. That's just the way it's going to be. We will get to main event prediction and time permitting, predict those other 3 fights, but we haven't talked about so many things that happened. All right, so Ilia Topuria over Bryce Mitchell. This Ilia Topuria is something else, Ken Flo, and Bryce Mitchell was dealing with a lot of different things, right? It took him like an otherworldly amount of time to get from Arkansas, like a full day late. He had 102 fever during the week. And these are real circumstances for Bryce Mitchell. Like he was really sick. I could tell in our fighter meeting, he was not his jovial self, and our whole staff can attest to this. I actually had to pivot from asking fight questions to asking him about his farm because I was getting nothing. And he's usually very forthcoming and very willing. So I knew something was off, and I had a pretty good source suggested that he was not well. That doesn't say anything to take away from Ilia Topuria, Ken Flo, that looks like, while being a bit undersized, could be a future UFC featherweight champion. We'll start with you, Flo. What would you think of Ilia Topuria over Bryce Mitchell?
I think that he would have given Bryce Mitchell a big time problem, even if he was 100%. Why? Just because the skills that he brings in there. I think that Ilia Topuria still is a little bit immature when it comes to his patience and composure in the octagon. I think he throws himself off balance on certain punches. But when you're talking about his skill set, this is a skill set that I think could be elite in that division. I truly do. From his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, to his striking, he's got a package that I think is going to be very difficult for people to defeat. I think that when you're talking about his overall skill set, how he's executing now, the experience that he's accruing, the level of competition, all that stuff's going to be tough. It's unfortunate for Bryce because this was a big fight for him. But I think it was a big challenge nonetheless. I think it was going to come down to whether he was able to take down Topuria and keep him there. He wasn't able to do that. And again, whether that was because he was sick or not, it is tough. I think Bryce Mitchell will be back. But Topuria came up big in this pay-per-view, man. A lot of eyes were on him, and he beat a guy who a lot of people know is as tough as they come at Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah, Brian, I'm certainly not suggesting that if these guys are both 100% that it's a Bryce Mitchell win the majority of times. But, man, this Topuria, I mean, talk about a guy who's got any number of different ways to get you out of there and just goes for it, willing to get hit. Like, I love this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big swing and a miss on my part. I was actually confident in Bryce Mitchell. I thought Topuria coming from a Greco-Roman background, I had flashbacks to Mark Madsen just getting taken down, over and over by Grant Dawson. So I'm like, okay, Bryce is going to do that. After that first exchange where Bryce went for a single and it was an easy stuff. And even though Topuria to me is a little undersized, I mean, he's compact. I was like, oh, this dude is okay. That's going to be an issue. And obviously his hands are great. And I think he maximized his profile this weekend. He killed at the press conference. He went after the biggest star in the card, Patty. They got some beef. I hope the UFC does not give him Patty because that's a bad matchup for Patty. But Topuria is very, very good. And the reason I went Bryce for a lot of reasons, I thought Bryce could just grind him out, and then cardio was in question. I thought maybe Topuria was feeling himself a little bit, but I was dead wrong. Topuria, that swagger, he's got that confidence he has, and he took some shots from Bryce too. There was a lot of left hands. He had a nice little black eye, and the guy is the real deal. No more fading him on my part.
I got to know how you saw the co-main event before I get to some of these other standouts.
So I haven't watched it back. I meant to watch it back. I literally just got home from work, so I haven't watched it back yet. But scoring it live, first round to me was all Gordon. Those left hooks were landing at will. Second round, I edged to Patty, but it was very close. In the third round, depending how you saw it, I really wish, because Jarrett Gordon is, a friend of the channel with Blau, and Blau was in the corner. I really wish Jarrett just kept it on the feet more, because I know the second round, Patty was landing shots, but those left hooks were there all day long. Kept his composure and just landed a little more because, controlling against the cage is fine, but he didn't throw anything. It's like, I just need a little more. So the third round, I did give the Patty just because it was so close. And everyone in the section was sick. Like, oh, I can't believe, whatever, because he's so polarizing that if it's a close fight and he talks and people want to root against him or really root for him, close fight, he automatically loses to some of the public opinion, which I think is wrong. It was an extremely close fight. I can, Seán Sheehan said it best. I can see it both ways. Those first two rounds, I thought, the first round was a clear Gordon. Second round, either way, but I gave it to Patty. And third was a hard round of scores. There really wasn't much going on.
I don't think Gordon knew the extent to which Pimblett had that compromised wheel, and I think Jared was the fresher guy too. Kenny, Jairzinho Rosenstrike over Chris Daukaus. The TKO comes at 23 seconds of the first round. So Chris Daukaus goes from being 4-0 in the UFC with 4 knockouts to 4-3, and he loses successively to Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, and Jairzinho Rosenstrike. Now, a lot of people are going to suggest a move to light heavyweight. I still think he would be giving up some speed there and even potentially some size. Oh, I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a Biggie Boy side to celebrate, to be sure, and this gets him back on a championship trajectory. But I do think the bigger story is Chris Daukaus, because it looks like a tale of 2 UFC careers, and didn't have any answers for Biggie Boy on the feet.
Leading up to this fight, Chris was saying all the right things. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to trade with this guy. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got to take this fight to the ground. I know exactly what I need to do. Now, in order to get to the clinch, in order to get your takedowns, you need to set things up with strikes. It is one thing to set up your grappling, set up your takedowns with strikes, and it's another thing to just strike. To me, and I think this is the case kind of with his brother as well, they either go from striking mode to grappling mode. There is no seamless transition into doing a full mixed martial arts like skill set of blending in the strikes with your takedown. He was standing right in front of Rosenstrike, throwing a combination, just sitting there, boom, boom, looking for a 1-2 and just watching his work. You can't do that against someone like Rosenstrike. Either get the hell out or get the hell in and look for a clinch. And he was in no man's land. And you don't want to be in no man's land striking with someone like Rosenstrike. Chris Daukaus is too small for heavyweight. He should be at 205, in my opinion. Yep. Even at 205, as you mentioned, he's not going to be the biggest 205er either. So he's got some work to get his body down there and then maybe put on some muscle, whatever. But he's in a weird spot right now. But I don't think he's a heavyweight. And he's got to figure some stuff out, but he's got to blend his whole skill set together. He's just not looking comfortable out there. And this is a tough one for him, man.
Anything else that we need to touch on? Brian Petrie, Edmund Shabazian, good comeback fight for him against Dalshalungi Ambula. Love the fact that they handed out 9 bonuses. Let's talk about Chris Curtis over Joaquin Buckley, because Joaquin Buckley is a really explosive athlete. And I still believe if Buckley gets a new contract, that he's going to knock a lot of middleweights out. Yeah. But your guy, Chris Curtis, is really, really good. And I guess I just don't know where to begin as far as the career retrospective. Like, why did it take him so long to get here? And why is he realizing such overwhelming success against a really good strength of schedule, despite having sort of being painted with a brush of a guy who was nothing more than a journeyman when he came in?
Right. Yeah. So I was really upset that I think if he was on any other episode of Contender Series, he would have got on. That Sean Lally hook kick knockout was amazing, but he was on the Greg Hardy episode. He was on the Lazo Benefit episode. So it was like he was the only one that didn't fight in the UFC for a while, and he was crushed, by the way, by that. 100%. Right. Yeah. He was almost done. Like, we talked, and I was severely upset. I think he's made the right things. I think the only critique I could have gave him was he should have got out of Cincinnati a little earlier. He was kind of splitting time between Cincinnati and Temecula, California. And then the big change was going to Vegas and going, I'm all in. He's got a son here. He's got a life here, but he's like, I'm all in. Matched up with John Wood, I believe, first. And then he went to Nick Sick, and it just kind of changed his career around. The big hurdle was obviously, just take him down. Just take him down. His wrestling's not that good. He fixed that, right? He fixed that. And going to 85, he used to kill his body to go to 70. I've always said he's a smaller 85er. He looked bigger than Joaquin Buckley in there. Significantly bigger to me live. And Buckley's a pretty ripped up. I know he's not the biggest 85er, but Chris added some size and looked good. And I love what he said his post fight. He's like, I'm 35. This kid's super fast. I had to beat him with timing. I had to beat him with, timing, because I'm not going to beat him with speed. And that's exactly what he did. His defensive, liabilities are so great. That's why the Ray Cooper fight always sticks out in my head, because that wasn't Chris. Chris retired, was eating a cinnamon bun, and they're like, hey, you want to fight Ray Cooper? Yeah, let's go. And he got emotional because that's who he's wanted to fight. But yeah, I'm just overwhelmed with his success, because he is a really good person. He's done a lot for me personally. I've been with him since his 4th pro fight. He had a bunch of amateur fights as well. And at the gym in Cincinnati, there's a lot of guys that came through that gym. And again, I don't want to keep talking about myself, but the one thing I've always been good at is like seeing talent. And I just thought he was head and shoulders above everybody there. The guy would sleep on the mats. The guy would take a bus there and not leave. And I just thought, you get into a bigger market like a Vegas or something like that, you're going to really shine. I think that's what it is. He's 35 years old. He just turned 35. And I mean, in his strength of the schedule, like you said, he's 4-1 in the UFC. And then the loss was to an elite guy on short notice, frustrating fight for him. But I couldn't be happy for him. I really was. I literally lost my voice. I screamed. I went nuts. It was very uncharacteristic of me. I'm usually pretty like, okay, I'm nervous. But I mean, I was like a little girl screaming when he won. A little bit of a comeback as well, because, even though he wasn't taking big shots, he was getting hit, wasn't doing enough. And then he finally caught the kick and found that left hand. And he smoked Buckley in the first round, like the first minute with the left hand. And I jumped out of my seat. I thought that was it. Dude, he smoked him. And I'm like, that's it. And then Buckley took it well. I was like, oh, God, he took that really well.
Pretty good wins list for Curtis, right? Brendan Allen, Adolfo Vieira, Phil Hawes, and now Joaquin Buckley. Hey, Ken Flo, Dracus Duplessis over Darren Till. Submission, Wikipedia calling it a face crank at 2:43 of round 3. I want to get your thoughts on Till and Duplessis. I do have to say, though, early on in this fight, right, Mark Smith is warning Till as he's absorbing some of these strikes in the clinch. And Till really felt like he had to sort of protest with the referee to make sure that he allowed him the chance to stay in this fight. And I don't really know why I bring it up and why I feel so strongly opinionated about it. I guess I would just say that if Mike Beltran was the referee there, Till's not getting so much as a warning. Mike Beltran's not even moving closer, closing the distance, right? Because he just doesn't feel like these are hugely significant strikes. Now, some of the strikes were damaging. I will acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But I hated that Darren Till had to continuously give the thumbs up and say, dude, I'm fine. I'm trying to defend. I need my hands. You can't always, as a fighter, intelligently defend by completely covering up. I don't know, man. I felt for Till in that situation. I really did. You shouldn't have to be spending time, campaigning with the referee to stay in the fight.
Yeah, I think some of it was his own doing, though. I mean, he literally was posting. He had one foot on the ground. He was posting with his knee and his hand on the mat. And he could have easily just stood up. Like, it was almost like he was content to do it. I don't know if he had an existing injury heading into that fight or something, but something was off. His stance, again, is it a compromised knee or something? But he looked like he was really off balance and just really heavy on one leg, or just seemed to be off. And he was getting taken down with ease. This is a Darren Till that's been around the game for a long time. Darren Till is a talented fighter. He's got a ton of potential. And to see zero improvement in that regard was really frustrating. Because I was a Darren Till fan the first time, we saw him fight, and you saw his trajectory. He was moving up really fast, and he was talking a good game. He was performing really well. He had some great performances. And now it seems like he's taking steps backwards in his game, which is really unfortunate. Now, is this injuries that he's experiencing before the fight, during the fight, whatever's going on, something needs to change, because he could find himself outside of the UFC, which would be crazy. But this was tough. I think Du Plessis is a tough dude. He's got a decently well-rounded skill set. Is he a future champion? I just don't see it. He's just not clean with his technique. He's a tough guy who gets it done with toughness and conditioning and strength, but he's not a highly technical fighter. And losing against someone like that, no disrespect to Du Plessis, I think was a huge step backwards for Darren Till. Big step forwards for Du Plessis, but man, the sport's nuts.
Brian, you got anything on that fight before we move on?
Yeah, it was upsetting. I'm a Darren Till fan. I won a lot of money on this fight with Cowboy, and I just think technically he's great. I love the Whitaker fight, and Kenny and I were texting during this fight. It was a really weird performance from him. Like the first round, it could have been a 10-8. He kind of saved himself from a 10-8 at the very end. He reversed position and started landing some big shots. Second round, he was piecing him up, and I know there was a knee bar that happened that possibly hurt his knee, or he already had a knee injury, whatever. In the third round, he's just staring at Du Plessis, just staring at him, and he's not going. And Kenny pointed out all his flaws with maybe his stance, and I think it's also a confidence issue as well. Yeah. I'm not really sure where his mind's at. He's saying he doesn't want main events, and I don't know where the pressure is. He kind of semi-retired on. I don't know if you guys saw that video where he's like, "I'm not retiring, but I need a break." But then he wants to come back next year, and it's like I don't. It was a lot of kind of like mixed signals to me. But that was upsetting. But yeah, Du Plessis, again, I agree with Kenny. I think he's a tough guy. Good cardio, good conditioning, and obviously strong, but I don't know with the ceiling. But yeah, very bummed out about Till.
I think Du Plessis is probably going to get a main event. I think he is a guy who can usher in that South African market. But there are a lot of tough tests for him at 85. Santiago Ponzinibbio, we congratulate him. Rallies to beat Alex Morono, one of 9 bonus winners at UFC 282. All right, time for the main event challenge. As we spin it forward, we have 3 selections for you. Final UFC live event of 2022 before an extended break. It's UFC Fight Night, Cannonier versus Strickland. First pick for us is going to be at lightweight, where Drew Dober finds himself a minus 150 betting favorite against Bobby King Green, who comes back plus 130. So Dober goes 0-2 in 2021. Now 2-0 with as many finishes here in 2022. On the other side, you may recall Bobby Green fought twice in a 14-day span in February. Stepped into that short notice main event against the now champion Islam Makhachev. That was 2 weeks after a win over Nasrat Haqparast. Pretty close on the number here, Brian Petrie. Which way you going, Drew Dober or Bobby King Green?
Final pick of the year, final for Kenny and I. I don't know who's up. If Cody can chase that number, that'd be great. I think I know it's very, very close. This fight, however, I think is going to be a banger. I mean, I do. 2 veterans. They like to stand up. I know the path to victory for Bobby Green, in my opinion, is to maybe take Drew Dober down. Drew Dober has proven to be a little stagnant off his back. He is kind of hard to take down, but he gets there. He just does whatever. But Bobby Green's game is usually take you down, let you back up, get you tired, because he's not going to get tired. And he does that slick shit. He's got the shoulder roll, great head movement. I wish some counters would come off of that, because then he would be really dangerous. Drew Dober, he's got a head like a Coke machine. This guy, you can't hurt him. 2 really impressive performances. That Rafael Alves fight, last time he fought, Alves is a big dude for 55, and he was thrown from his hip, and Dober would just eat it. Dober, I think, is going to miss a lot, but I like the leg kicks in him. I think if you really take out some Bobby Green wheels, you can find some success. Drew Dober is not going to take a step back. It really all depends on what Bobby Green's going to show up, because I do think he's very good. I think this is going to be a decision win for Drew Dober. So I like Dober as the money line pick. I like over 2.5 or by decision, whatever book gives you the better number. But yeah, this would be a fun fight. Give me Drew Dober.
Kenny, right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, Drew Dober -150, Bobby Green +130. Obviously, you beat both of these guys in your prime, but we need to know who wins when they go head-to-head.
You're very kind, John. Listen, I think Brian did a great breakdown of this fight. I think it's really close to call, and because of that, I'm going with the underdog. I think Drew Dober does have a good chin. No question about that. He's very tough, but so is Bobby. I just think Drew gets hit a little bit too much. But if Bobby catches you too much, then you could get slept or get outpointed. So I'm going to go with the underdog. I like Bobby here.
Yeah.
All right, next up, also at 155 pounds. I don't know if Ken Flo beats both of these guys at his prime, but maybe. No, all right. Number 9, Arman Tsarukyan -180. 12th ranked Damir Ismagulov +155. Tsarukyan hasn't fought actually since that main event loss to Mateusz Gamrot back in June. On the other side, Ismagulov, sort of the unknown quantity in this top 15 at lightweight. He's won 19 in a row. He's 24-1 overall, 5-0 in the UFC. And Bri, as you know, a lot of film on him. All 5 of his UFC wins by decision, including the last one, a split over Guram Kutateladze in Austin, Texas back in June. Co-main event, Tsarukyan or Ismagulov for you?
I love this fight. Shout out the Anik and Florian podcast Twitter channel. They put out a video of Kenny from UFC Undisputed. I think it was 3 of the shadow boxing and his little character. Made me want to run out and get the video game. I know it's older, but man, that excited me. This fight's great. These are 2 guys that are a little under the radar. Tsarukyan, I think, is above the radar, but then he took a little step back with the Gamrot fight, which I thought he won. I went back and rewatched that when I was in Vegas because I knew we were doing the picks. It was so close. I wish Tsarukyan didn't shoot as much. Be confident a little bit in your hands, because he just kept rushing the takedowns, and it's like, and they were getting stuffed, which isn't a good optics. Then you got Ismagulov, who I think is a guy that no one's talking about. This guy's fucking 24-1. And outside the UFC, he was finishing a lot of people. I know he hasn't had that success in the UFC. His striking's good. His takedown defense is good. His submissions are good. And he's a lot to handle in there. His kicks are great to the body. He sets everything up. He's not the fastest guy. He's very precise. This is a really hard fight to pick. And when you get hard fights like this, to me, I lean dog. I go dog, and I like the dog number on Ismagulov here. I think he's a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I think it's going to be a really close decision, or possibly Ismagulov is going to take over on the feet, because I think he has a possibility to do that. Give me the dog, though, babe. Let's go.
I like it. Nicely done, and I appreciate the homework on the road. Ken Flo, Arman Tsarukyan or Damir Ismagulov for you?
I think Ismagulov is a fantastic striker. Is he head and shoulders above someone like Tsarukyan on the feet? No, I don't think so. Now, let's talk about the grappling. I think Arman Tsarukyan has a much larger advantage in the grappling department than Ismagulov has in the striking department. So I think Arman's got to mix in his strikes, especially with his kicks. Keep Ismagulov on the outside, and then start integrating some wrestling. Try to put Ismagulov on his back. I think he can do that. I think he can outpoint him. I do think this is a close fight. I'm curious to see if Ismagulov has what it takes. I just like Tsarukyan's strength of schedule so far, and I'm taking him because of it.
Nice.
All right, Kenny, back to you on the main event. Final selection of 2022. And I will get the records out there. Brian Petrie, 102-65. Kenny, 96-71. So head-to-head, picking every fight, Brian Petrie takes home the 2022 championship. But as I mentioned, for better or for worse, it's all coming back under my control.
Yes.
Come January 14th, 2023. And then you guys are going to know acutely, exactly, every goddamn week, exactly how much money you have made or lost for the viewership, period.
Let's go.
It's not that anyone else did a bad job, but I'm taking it back. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm taking it back.
All right.
Main event, Sean Strickland -120. The killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier, the even money underdog, +100, as they say nowadays. Always used to be even money. This +100 shit. Get the fuck out of here. Cannonier coming off the title loss to Israel Adesanya back in July. Strickland losing by knockout to the now champion Alex Pineda that same night, UFC 276. Ken Flo, Sean Strickland slightly the favorite here. You going favorite or underdog to close out the year?
Yeah, I think Strickland is extremely durable. I like his pressure style of fighting, and I think it's going to take Cannonier a little bit to get adjusted to it. However, if someone gets the finish here, I think it's Cannonier. I think Cannonier will be able to withstand some of that pressure. I think he will be able to adjust, and you just can't continue to come forward with your chin high against someone like Cannonier. I think Cannonier will find it, and if he does, he's putting you to sleep, period. So this is a tough fight for Sean Strickland. I think, can he win this? Yeah, absolutely. I think Sean is extremely durable, very tough. But I like Cannonier. I think his experience and his power is going to be the difference in this one. So I guess I'm taking the underdog.
It is amazing that we now talk about Cannonier as this credentialed, experienced guy, because for so long the knock on him was that he just didn't have the experience, and now he's accrued it. And I do think, Kenny, it's a worthwhile part of the handicap. Bri, final selection of the year. Which way are you going?
Yeah, so I'm bummed out for many reasons for missing Friday. Chris invited me to team dinner, and I just wanted to meet Sean Strickland and see if he's a real person, because this guy is interesting as they come. But he's got an interesting fight style. He holds his hands kind of like almost he's holding a broom. He's almost basically sideways. And Kenny's right. He throws his chin up in the air. It's a little weird, and he loves to spar. He makes no bets about it. He goes out there and says, I want to spar everyone every time. He posts videos of it. Problem is are you correcting the things that you are making mistakes in the Pereira fight and other fights? And when you make those mistakes against a guy like Jared Cannonier, Killer Gorilla, who's got muscle on his fucking teeth, that's going to be a problem. And I absolutely love Cannonier's leg kicks as well. I think those are dangerous. I think Sean leaves his leg out there. And this is a 5-round fight. And Cannonier proved, even being muscled up, he can go 5 hard rounds. And so I'm with Kenny here. I think the power is going to make a difference. You got Sean Strickland, who doesn't really have the biggest power, but he's got a lot of pressure, and he's going to put it in your face a little bit. I think Cannonier's going to start a little slow, chip away a little bit, and land a big shot. I like Cannonier by KO here. Give me the dog as well.
Cannonier, orthodontist in Arizona, is like, dude, I've never seen muscle on teeth before. I don't know exactly how to navigate it. Brian Petrie MMA is the handle on social media. Hey, appreciate your contributions. Want to figure out a way to have you involved in the award show later this year. So stay tuned for that. But great to see you a few days ago, and wish you and the family all the best with everything you guys are going through. And
thank you.
We will talk to you before the year is out, to be sure. But enjoy some time off. And thanks for all your contributions, kid. We appreciate you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, John. You guys changed my life this year. I mean, I started kind of full-time a little bit around the March area. It's been incredible. I mean, this is what I want to do. This is my life. This is my passion. And without you guys, I wouldn't be here. Without you guys, I wouldn't have got recognized at the fucking fights, which is still crazy. And listen, it's just been awesome. This is my highlight of my week. And you guys are the best. And it's still like, I still have to, before we get on, I still have to tell myself, okay, you're huge fans of these guys, but let's fucking keep the fans inside and let's fucking get out the picks. So thank you so much. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. We'll talk to you then in the year. And
looks like you got a big supporter in Brendan Schaub, longtime supporter of this program.
Thank you, B. Schaub, for that as well. So thank you, everybody.
You kill it every week, buddy.
I appreciate
and you can always tell people that you beat James Krause in a head-to-head competition.
I don't know. I was trying to brag at the fights, but I feel like if I brought his name up, I might have got kicked out of the building. So I kept it a little kind of.
It's so funny, right? Everybody's so afraid, as if it's the elephant in the room. I've done 2 shows. I brought his name up on both. Not necessarily by design, but he factors prominently. Was supposed to be in TJ Brown's corner.
Right.
And this podcast has my name on it. I could say whatever I want.
That's right.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. See ya.
There he is. Brian Petrie with us every week that there are fights at the very least. All right. We have some MERROW seconds, as we call him, the executive producer, Cody MERROW. Really the lifeblood of the program that doesn't necessarily always get the credit or the shine that he deserves. So, Cody, needless to say, you could take the wheels off of this whole operation with one phone call. So thanks.
I thought Brian Petrie was the producer of this podcast.
Well, I know that's what I was gonna say. I was like, damn, I can't get no respect. No respect. Fucking speaking Brazilian Portuguese on the outro of the show. I can't get any damn respect in here.
So I got, as luck would have it, I got to do another podcast in 9 minutes. So we're on the clock a little bit.
All right, yeah, getting shortchanged by my own talent. That's fine.
No, I mean
we're here.
MERROW seconds. I budgeted 9 minutes. I mean, I thought that's pretty good, right? You usually go 2.
That's good. Yeah, that's more than I pay for on the show. So, to touch on some, so I did tweet right after the fight that Jared was robbed. So I think Sean was throwing a little shots at me a little bit there in the
that's
Seán Sheehan segment. Well, we had some we had some friendly discourse on Twitter, and at the end of the day, I'm not a judge nor a commentator, so I can make these comments.
Well, I mean, I should read what I said about what I texted Jared Gordon, right? Because I still believe at my core that he won the fight. But yeah, I thought the decision was trash in the moment.
Well, and so I think Kenny disagreed with how I scored it as well, but that me and Kenny are friendly and he can kick my ass. So I don't say anything to Kenny. But the only reason that I brought it up is because Sean kept saying madness, to call it a robbery. Well, call me fucking crazy because I think Jared got robbed. I'm trying to sell merch. That's so if you use code FLASH at the flash sale at AnikFlorianPodcast.com, you're going to get yourself 17% off because he had the walkout of the night with edge of 17. So I'm bringing it full circle here.
Look at that. Promo code FLASH, AnikFlorianPodcast.com will take you to the store. That's our little honor for Jared Gordon. That's fun. Yes, good for you.
So a couple of notes there on UFC 282. You pretty much touched on everything as far as all the finishes went. Cameron Simon, obviously, and TJ Brown at the beginning of the card. Both, I think, were things that didn't maybe get as much shine because they were so early. Bryce Mitchell did reveal on social media that he was battling the flu about a week ago, so it attributed to his performance. John, I know that was something that you kind of felt after the fights was an impact, so I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, my source didn't even reach out until after the fact as far as the totality of what he was dealing with. But yeah, I guess it just Kenny, for me, I just felt like Bryce Mitchell is really one of those guys who would go to sleep in a blood choke, right? Like if he was healthy, I just don't think he cares. I don't know. I would some guys say they're willing to die in there and you really believe them. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe if we had Bryce on in the future, that would be a question, right? Because it's not always the wisest thing, right? To not tap, right? I'm not saying that's the good thing he strikes me as a guy who wouldn't have tapped that quickly if he was healthy, but I guess that's neither here nor there.
Being sick's a real thing, man. That will affect you. That's got to be super rough, especially given how tough that matchup was for him.
Yeah. What else you got, kid?
Probably not the easiest weight cut. I mean, he's pretty big, so
no, you got to deal with that too. That's horrible.
So Duplessis 4 consecutive wins, ties champ Alex Pereira at 185, as well as Roman Dolidze, who we also saw recently, and Andre Petrosky at 185. The only other win streak longer is Andre Muniz at 5.
Yeah,
so I just thought it was some context there.
Yeah, I mean, you could main event Muniz with Dolidze. I mean, there's so many options now with some of those guys. I'd like to see them get on the poster.
And just to touch on Dolidze, he moved up to number 8 in the middleweight rankings, and then the only real big change was Pavlovich up to number 3. I'm not sure if the rankings have been updated so far because we're on East Coast time, but it is what it is there. The last point on 282 was Shabazian's 1,134 days since his last win. He's only 25 years old. John, I know you mentioned on the broadcast that Ali Abdelaziz pulling him back was kind of a big reason for that that delay in fighting, and I think it was obviously the right move. He's really young in his career, so good to see him get back on the horse.
And Mick Maynard deserves credit there too, right? Because sometimes with your talent, however marquee, you don't just want to shelve them for a year, right? You have roster slots, you want guys to fight. So good on Mick for giving Shabazian the requisite developmental time to rebuild.
So the big announcement coming out of the event was UFC 286 announced for London's O2 Arena. John, are they going to get you over there or what?
Yes, I have not called a fight in the UK since 2013. So almost 10 years to the day we're headed back to the UK. Very excited about that. I don't know what the main event's going to be, but I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited for Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira in Brazil in 6 weeks. That's madness. Jamal Hill, obviously a friend of the channel, has been on Remember the Show, I believe, 3 times.
He's a champ.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty crazy for Jamal Hill.
It's been great. Well, be careful about the victory blunt there in Brazil. I'm not sure what the rules are. You don't have Kenny with you. They're not going to recognize you. So you got to watch out there when you're in.
Jamal Hill, leave the backwoods at home if you're listening, kid.
So Wonder Boy did say publicly, and obviously this is with no real source, that he said that Edwards Masvidal is what the promotion's looking at if Usman has hand surgery, and we know that Bilal Muhammad's not going to be happy about that, but he said that he's going to fight in London either way. So
no comment.
Usman did have hand surgery.
Have hand surgery, yes, yeah, but I guess maybe it's not going well. I don't know.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
No comment from John. Take from that what you will. Johnny, save me a seat. Passport's in the mail. I mean, we might be London calling.
If you want to come to London, you can use my 2 tickets. I'll reserve them for you.
Oh, thanks, John.
You're welcome, buddy. Lifeblood of the show.
So 2 more points, but this one is one that everyone's waiting for. Cody's covers, baby. We're on a 3-week hot streak. We have become the official NFL pick source of MMA podcasts in the world. We're easily the number 1, I think.
So what do you have for this week? Because I got to go.
Okay, we're going back to the Vikings. -4 at home against Indy. Justin Jefferson, best wide receiver in the NFL. Vikings 4-0 against the spread after having less than 90 yards. Indy gives up 126 yards. I think Dalvin Cook is going to have a good second half. Kirk protects the ball. Indy 30th in turnovers. So I think that they're going to cover that 4 points. And I'm wearing this hat for a reason. Guys, we all bitch about the judging. That's fine. But I am a big anti-guy against robo-umpires. I don't want robotic judging. So I'm pretty good with arguing about judging scoring as opposed to robotic scoring. And I'm wearing the hat because Carlos Correa, please. I know you listen to the podcast. Please come to Boston. Please, that's all I need.
Xander Bogaerts is a Padre. There's a hole at short, and we need Carlos Correa in Boston. If you're willing to sign a short-term deal, my brother, maybe like 4 years for like 135 or something. Correa trying to get that 280, 300 million, but we'll see. He was actually at UFC 282. I didn't get a chance to say hello, but my brother was excited to get a chance to meet him. All right. Don't forget, Anik and Florian Rewind exclusively on UFC Fight Pass, on which we look back at a fight in UFC history. Really fun segment that we're doing monthly, so check that out. AnikFlorianPodcast.com. Code for merchandise Flash gets you 17% off. Don't forget KennyFlorianMartialArts.com and Millions.co for your One More Sleep designs as well. Thank you to our guests, Seán Sheehan, Brian Petrie, Ray Longo, our producer, Cody Merrow. For Ken Flom, John Anik, we thank you all for listening, for watching, and we will see you in less than a week. Until then, thank you all. Yo later.